A long time ago, in a peaceful kingdom somewhere in South Korea, there lived a kind prince named Minju. Prince Minjun was the perfect image of royalty. With his chiseled jawline, sleek black hair, and a presence that commanded attention, he was admired by many but known deeply by very few. At 29, Minjun was next in line to the throne of the Kingdom of Goryeo, a position he had been groomed for his entire life. His daily life was steeped in tradition. Every morning, the palace hummed with activity before the sun even rose. Servants ensured everything ran like clockwork. Minjun would wake at 6:30 a.m., train with his swordmaster, study the kingdom's affairs, and attend endless meetings with advisors and ministers. His days were meticulously planned down to the minute. While he carried out his duties with precision, Minjun often felt like a bird in a gilded cage. The palace itself was grand, with towering walls, sprawling gardens, and halls adorned with priceless art. It was a place that spoke of history and legacy, but for Minjun, it often felt cold and lonely. His parents had died when he was a boy, his father in a hunting accident and his mother from a sudden illness. The responsibility of raising him fell to his grandmother, the Queen Dowager, a formidable woman who ruled the kingdom with a sharp mind and an iron will. The Queen Dowager loved Minjun dearly, though she rarely showed it. She saw in him the hope of the kingdom's future, and her teachings were strict. "A king's heart must be steady as a mountain," she would say. Though Minjun respected her, he longed for a different kind of life, one where he could laugh freely and make his own choices. One evening, during a grand banquet, Minjun overheard his grandmother speaking to the court astrologer about a ritual to secure his destiny. Intrigued, Minjun began secretly reading about the ritual. A few days later, his grandmother informed him that it would be performed to guide him toward his true path. The ritual took place in the temple at the palace. Surrounded by chanting priests and glowing candles, Minjun stood in the center of an elaborate pattern drawn on the floor. The air crackled with energy, and as the chanting grew louder, Minjun felt a sudden pull, as though the ground beneath him had vanished. Everything went dark. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a dusty road under the blazing sun. He sat up, disoriented, and realized he was in the middle of a street. Horns blared, and a man in a rickety yellow bus shouted, "Oga, Comet for road." "Yuan Dai." Confused, Minjun got to his feet. He brushed the dust off his royal robes and looked around. The streets were bustling with life, vendors calling out to passers-by, children running around, and cars honking nonstop. Before he could gather his thoughts, a young woman approached him. "What on earth are you doing standing in the middle of the road like that?" she asked. This was Ada, a sharp-tongued and quick-witted seamstress in her mid-20s. She lived in Lagos, a city known for its chaos and energy. Ada had little patience for nonsense, but there was something about Minjun's confused expression and outlandish attire that caught her attention. I do not know where I am," Minjun said, his Korean accent thick, but his English surprisingly good. Ada frowned. "Wait, are you lost? Where are you from?" "Korea," Minjun replied, standing tall. "I am Prince Minjun of Goryeo." Ada blinked, then burst out laughing. "Okay, Prince Minjun of Goryeo. Come with me before someone thinks you've escaped from somewhere." She led him to her modest apartment, where she lived with her younger brother, Chibuzo. The moment Chibuzo saw Minjun, he nearly dropped the bowl of gari he was eating. "Who is this one?" Chibuzo asked, his teenage voice filled with suspicion. "And why is he dressed like he's in a costume drama?" "He says he's a prince," Ada said, smirking. "From Korea?" Chibuzo raised an eyebrow. "Oh, Daegu. So you just went outside and picked up one random Korean man?" Minjun, sensing the skepticism, straightened his back. "I am truly a prince," he said earnestly. His English was formal, and he often paused to find the right words, which only made him sound more peculiar. Over the next few days, Minjun stayed with Ada and Chibuzo while trying to figure out how to return to Korea. His princely mannerisms often clashed with the reality of Lagos. He refused to eat with his hands, was horrified by the lack of air conditioning and once tried to bow respectfully to a street vendor who promptly burst out laughing. Despite the cultural differences, Minjun slowly adapted. He helped Ada at her workshop, where she designed and sewed beautiful clothes. Though clumsy at first, Minjun's royal discipline kicked in, and he surprised Ada with his dedication. Their interactions became a constant source of humor. Ada would tease him mercilessly. "Prince, you can't even hold a needle properly. What kind of training did you do in your palace?" Minjun would respond with mock seriousness. "In my palace, we train for battle, not for sewing." As they spent more time together, Minjun began to see the beauty in Ada's simple yet hardworking life. Ada, in turn, admired Minjun's sincerity and his determination to adapt to a world so different from his own. Their relationship took an unexpected turn one evening when they were caught in a downpour on their way back from the market. They took shelter under a small shop's awning, laughing as the rain drenched them. For the first time, Minjun let go of his princely composure and laughed freely. "You're different than I thought," Ada said, her voice softer than usual. "And you are unlike anyone I have ever met," Minjun replied, his gaze lingering on hers. Their bond deepened, but it wasn't without challenges. Chibuzo, ever protective of his sister, often clashed with Minjun. "I don't trust him," he told Ada one evening. "What if he's lying about everything?" Ada sighed. "Chibuzo, not everyone is out to hurt us. He's just different." As Minjun and Ada's feelings for each other grew, so did the obstacles in their way. Gossip spread in the neighborhood about the strange foreigner living with Ada. Minjun struggled with the reality that he might never return to Korea, and Ada wrestled with her own fears about falling for someone so different from her. One day, Minjun decided to tell Ada how he felt. "Ada," he began, fumbling slightly with his words. "I do not know how to say this well in English, but you are the reason I have found happiness here." Ada, caught off guard, laughed nervously. "Minjun, are you sure you're not just confused because of everything that's happened?" "I am sure," he said firmly. I love you." As Minjun confessed his feelings to Ada, the moment was perfect. The world around them seemed to pause, and for once, everything felt right. But just as Ada opened her mouth to respond, the air around them crackled, and a familiar swirl of energy appeared. "No," Minjun shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. Before he could take another step, the vortex engulfed him, and in the blink of an eye, he was gone. When Minjun opened his eyes, he found himself standing in the middle of the royal temple in Korea. The room was dimly lit, with only the flickering flames of ceremonial candles casting shadows on the walls. His head spun as he took in his surroundings, and then the realization hit him like a crashing wave. He was back.
No.
No, no, no. Minjun's voice echoed in the empty chamber as he clenched his fists in frustration. He paced back and forth, muttering angrily. His chest heaved, and his usually composed demeanor shattered. "How dare you?" he shouted into the void, addressing the vortex as if it could hear him. I was in the middle of something important. You cannot do this to me." But the room remained silent, the only sound being the crackling of the candles. Minjun stormed out of the temple, heading straight for the astrologer who had conducted the initial ritual. He barged into the astrologer's quarters, startling the old man so much that he spilled ink all over his robes. "Your Highness," the astrologer stammered, bowing quickly. "Where is it?" Minjun demanded, his voice sharp and his eyes blazing. "The vortex. How do I summon it again?" The astrologer hesitated, glancing nervously at the prince. "Your Highness, the vortex only obeys the Queen Dowager's orders. It is bound by the will of the royal bloodline." Minjun's jaw tightened. "Then I will find it myself." With a determination that burned brighter than ever, Minjun returned to the temple that night. He stood in the center of the ritual markings and closed his eyes, calling out to the vortex with every ounce of his will. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a faint shimmer appeared in the air, growing brighter and swirling into the familiar shape of the vortex. "You again," a deep, gravelly voice echoed, as if the vortex itself were speaking. Why have you summoned me? I need you to take me back, Minjun said, his tone firm but pleading. The vortex seemed to pause, its swirling energy slowing as if considering his words. You know I cannot do that without the Queen Dowager's approval. Minjun's frustration boiled over. I do not care about her approval. I need to return. The vortex chuckled darkly. You think you can command me, Prince? I follow orders, not whims. Minjun clenched his fists, then took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. I will do whatever it takes. Just send me back. For even a short time, the vortex swirled faster, its voice turning skeptical. And why should I? What do I gain from this? Minjun hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a gold pin adorned with the royal crest, a valuable heirloom passed down through generations. This, he said, holding it up. This is yours if you help me. The vortex seemed to hum with interest. A bribe? From a royal? How amusing. It circled Minjun, the air around him growing heavy with its energy. Very well, Prince. I will grant you 24 hours. After that, you must return or face the consequences. Agreed, Minjun said without hesitation. The ritual began again, with the vortex spinning faster and faster until the temple walls disappeared, and Minjun was once again swallowed by the blinding light. When he opened his eyes, he was back in Ada's workshop. Ada screamed, dropping the fabric she had been cutting. Minjun, what is wrong with you? Are you some kind of spirits? Before she could say more, Minjun rushed to her, grabbing her hands. Ada, I do not have much time, he said breathlessly. His English was rushed and slightly broken, but his sincerity was unmistakable. I begged to come back. To see you again. Ada blinked, trying to process what he was saying. What do you mean, begged? Where did you go? You just disappeared. It is hard to explain, Minjun said, his grip tightening on her hands. But I had to return. I had to tell you that I meant every word I said before I left. I love you, Ada. Ada stared at him, her heart pounding. Minjun, this is crazy. You can't just disappear and reappear like this. I know, he said, his voice softening. But I will find a way to stay. I promise. Their reunion was intense, filled with laughter, tears, and the unspoken understanding that their time together was limited. Over the next 24 hours, Minjun and Ada made the most of their fleeting moments. They explored the city, laughed over street food, and even danced in the rain. Minjun's awkward English and Ada's sarcastic humor made every interaction a mix of comedy and heartfelt connection. But as the hours dwindled, the reality of their situation loomed over them. When the vortex appeared again, Minjun held Ada close, whispering, "This is not the end. I will return, for good this time." As he disappeared once more, Ada stood alone, her heart heavy but filled with hope. Back in Korea, Minjun was more determined than ever to defy the constraints of his royal life and find a way back to Ada. His love for her gave him a newfound strength, setting the stage for a battle not just against tradition but against fate itself. What will happen when the Queen Dowager finds out Minju sacrificed his royal pin to return to Nigeria? Will this be the end of Minju and Ada, or will they see each other again? Subscribe to find out in part 2. Bye for now.